then you'll be getting a salary between $500 and $1,000. One of the key questions you might be asking, why should someone else in Oman advertise for such position in Malawi and spend such amount of resources for air tickets, visa, to recruit a domestic worker who has not even gone to school, who is not a profession, into Oman? The cost so far, it's about, for a Malawian to go to Oman, Arab country, the agency or any Malawian would need close to $4,000. Now, one wants to recruit someone else from Malawi and fly that person to Oman. The advert itself is quite questionable. But the moment this advert was put on social media, within a period of 2 hours, it reached out to close to 17 million Malawians. They had access to this advert, where, you know, most of young people, well qualified graduates, are not employed, desperate, looking for work. Now they are told that your face salary, just as a domestic worker, you'll be getting $500, which is about 500,000 Malawian kwacha. So police officers, judges, ministers, because they didn't know, they were busy circulating this advert. One, spending their own money promoting an advert to recruit victims of human trafficking because they didn't know. And whenever people like myself would bring some sense to the public, I'm only talking. I'm not offering any employment opportunity. The public, those who are desperate looking for work, decided to ignore the voice of reasons and cooperate with the trafficker. Now the computer is already tired. Yeah, so when people know about human trafficking, they will delete this. They will not circulate it. They will not become a free agent, advertising agent for the trafficker. Then secondly, if people are aware about issues of human trafficking, they will protect human people's life. The pictures that I'm showing you happen in Malawi. These are Ethiopians. They were recruited in Ethiopia, in East Africa, taken through Malawi on their way to South Africa, Southern Africa. The first picture that you see, this one, is a picture of a mass grave where 30 people from Ethiopia were buried, coming from Ethiopia going to South Africa. The other picture is a van that was also used to transport some victim from Ethiopia to South Africa. They passed through Malawi. And in Mozambique, the van was intercepted. And in that van, there were 78 people with one woman. And out of 78, 68 were found dead in that van. And they were buried just by the roadside, because it happened during the time of COVID-19. So you'd see that if people are aware, they will not even provide that transport. If people are aware, they will not subject themselves to human traffickers. They will avoid, and the people are aware, they will fight against human trafficking. Then again, there are situations that have been happening again, where thousands of Malawians, and mostly women, as we are meeting here, they are in Oman, being exploited. And the government of Malawi, the UN agencies where I'm working now, has offered to pay for air tickets on all the women from Malawi that will be rescued. But the traffickers and the Oman government are demanding that we can only release these Malawians if you refund the money that we spend on transportation. And now, when we did the calculations for those refunds, we are talking about well over 150,000 US dollars for Oman government and their employees to release these victims. Malawi government doesn't have those monies. It is not only Malawi government that is facing this problem with Arab countries. All the African countries, they are facing that huge problem with Oman. But what is important is that when people are aware about human trafficking, one from your side, then you would definitely support an initiative that promote the prevention, so people are not subjected to this type of abuse. I know that some of you really understand this issue of human trafficking, but just to make sure that we agree in terms of concept and also terminology. I know after this session, people will be asking, what is that you're talking about? And it's very important for me, having done the introduction, to define what is this criminal activity called human trafficking, or else trafficking in person. So, what is very important for you to know from our onset is that this is a criminal enterprise. It is a business which people do to benefit from the services, exploitative services of another person. So this criminal enterprise go through an organized process. Those that are engaged in this criminal enterprise don't rush. They fall through an organized way of doing their business. One, to recruit their victim, to protect themselves, and to exploit the victim, even to use the benefit they would gain through exploitation. So everything that happens is organized. They would make sure that the time they invest in all these processes, the resources which they invest in these processes must yield a result, and this result must be a profit. So if they invest $500, it has to come with a refund and a profit. That's why, to deal with it, and knowing that these people really invest their time in terms of organization, the United Nations decided to provide some guidelines or guidance that the only way to win the war against human trafficking is to make sure that we have dealt with all the elements that are associated with this organized crime, from the point of recruitment to the time when the victim has been taken away from the point where the victim has been recruited. We must also deal with if the victim has only been transferred to America, the transferring method. If the victim is being harbored in Kenya on their way to America, we must also deal with issues that happen at the harboring point. Or if someone else receiving that victim, we must also look at that. And the means that is used to recruit, to transport, to harbor, transfer that victim must also be dealt with. And most important, we must also look at the purpose for this enterprise. What is the purpose? So the United Nations provide a mouthful definition that covers almost everything associated with this organization, from the recruitment process, transportation, the means that is used, and the purpose. The whole reason is to make sure that when we are fighting against this crime, we must deal with the roots. We must completely deal with this organized crime. If we leave one particular element, then we will not be able to deal with it. So there are offenses that are committed at every stage of that process. And to sum it up, as a global definition, a definition that is used globally, when it comes to human trafficking, it talks about the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of a person by means of threats or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, or abuse of power, or abuse of position of vulnerability. For one to achieve the consent of the person that has been recruited, or having received a payment for exploitation or recruitment of another person for your own benefit. If all these things have happened, for three reasons. The first one, for the purpose of labor exploitation, for the purpose of sexual exploitation, and for purpose of organ removal, then that person who has done that has committed a crime, a criminal offense known as human trafficking or trafficking in person. And again, every person that is involved in aiding and abetting to support this process has also committed the same crime of human trafficking. That's why it's called an organized crime. For this particular child who has been recruited in Malawi, going to Oman cannot walk. It has to use the borders or fly to Oman. And that person, to get a medical report, a police report, he's not or she's not a police officer, no relation in the police, has to go to the police and seek those documentation And if they don't qualify, but they still find themselves in those countries, it means someone else has fraudulently provided those documentation. And that person has aided the offense and is a trafficker. The car that has been used, that particular driver as a transporter is also a trafficker. So my source is the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Crime, Organized Crime, and it's now the supplementary protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in person, especially when the victim is a woman or a child. So there is a convention. That convention which was ratified in 2006 by Malawi government and also most of the countries around the world. That provided definition of human trafficking under Article 2. Now, I would quickly want to deal with the important elements. People move all the time from one place to another. It's a right. They need to do that, and we need to support them. But if their movement is not out of will, we need to investigate what really happened, particularly when they've been found in an exploitative environment. Yeah, so there are key elements that are involved in the cases of human trafficking. Before I deal with those key elements, I would want to make some emphasis for us to understand that here, as we're meeting, discussing these issues, the traffickers are also meeting, discussing where to find the resources of the human and where to supply them. So it's a business of demand and supply. It focuses on who is now looking for domestic workers, which country are looking for domestic workers, whose payment cannot or is lower than those provided by or protected by government. Then it will also respond where or which country can be able to supply those products. So it's an organization that deals with the demand for service and to supply a human for those exploitative services. So, as already mentioned, this is an adventure concerning 4 activities, major activities. 1, recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, and also exploitation. These are very key stages involved by every trafficker. If a person is qualified as a victim of human trafficking, just know that this victim has gone through these processes, has been recruited, transported, sometimes harbored, and exploited. It's not bad to repeat that investors, the traffickers, invest money to recruit. And therefore, for us, if we don't focus on prevention, we know what happens when the victim is now on the move. The moment a police officer or any of you would attempt to intercept, to rescue the victim at the point of transportation, harboring, and exploitation, you just know that you will face some guns. It's now this person who is now on the move is an investment. Can only, if that person can be released at a point when has been exploited, a profit has been made. Without that, that victim who is now on the move is controlled and protected. That's why when you are dealing with this crime of human trafficking, you just know that you also deal with other organized crime. Where there is human trafficking, you start investigating, you are assured that you also deal with trafficking of firearms, which are used to protect the victim, who is their product, their network, from any enforcement officers. You just know also that you'll be dealing with issues of corruption, which is used to aid and abet human trafficking as an organized crime. You just know also that you'll be dealing with issues of drugs, illicit drug trafficking, which is also another element or an offense that is used to control the victim for abuse and also serious harm, which will lead to loss of memories for that victim to be exploited. So from the UN, this offense, human trafficking, qualifies as a global crime where people trade in people and exploit them for profit. So each year, as a business, globally, it is estimated that the traffickers makes close to 150 billion US dollars. This is what is generated through the service of human trafficking. Then secondly, out of that 150 billion, 99 billion is generated through sex trafficking. And mostly those that are engaged in as victims are women and girls. Of course, these days we have also witnessed quite a good number of young boys that are also engaged in forced prostitution or sex trafficking. We need to be talking about these things because from the UN side, we look at the seriousness of the offense, the amount that is needed to deal with those offenses, the type of organization involved in those offenses for them to happen. We also look at the effect on the victim in terms of all type of transnational crimes or organized crime that I've mentioned. Issues of terrorism, drugs, trafficking of precious stones, smuggling of migrants are all transnational and organized crime. So globally, human trafficking is the second on the list, and it's also fast-growing criminal offense. The network is growing, the victims are increasing, the traffickers are making more and more profit through human trafficking. And about 51 billion is also generated through other type of exploitation, labor, exploitation, and also organ removal. It's not bad really to make emphasis in terms of the purpose. This one was specifically for Malawi. It talks about those three purposes that I've mentioned about. It's globally. I wanted to give you this an example. If you check in the United States of America, Mexico, or other countries in the world, they agree that the traffickers will recruit the victims for three purposes. One, labor exploitation. If the government of America would say the minimum wage is $50, you pay them less. Having been recruited from another area, and those people are working under exploitative environment. Doing some investigation, They could be victims of human trafficking. Others are recruited for organs. There are two reasons. Organs, why people are recruited for organs. One related to medical purpose. Then in my country and other African countries, I know other developing countries, they are also recruited for organ removal for the purpose of some elements to do with witchcraft or using them in traditional healing sort of processes or reasons. I'll discuss with you in details shortly. I've already talked about this. As a first stage for these processes, the traffickers will invest their money to recruit. They have professions specialized in the recruitment of the victim. They cannot just call anyone to recruit. They use their organized net, people that understand how to recruit another person. They don't recruit if there's no demand to supply. From the law enforcement point of view, when we are training law enforcement officers like frontline officers, the immigration, the medical doctors, faith leaders, teachers, truck drivers, we look at all these agencies, officials as frontline officers because of their work. The traffickers or the victim would not, rather the victims would go to them to procure a service from them. Could be they are looking for passport. They are looking for transportation. They have been injured. They are looking for medical assistance. So at that stage, that's when the victims are identified. Every victim has to be identified. The victim will not come and present themselves as a victim. They go through a process of identification. To identify the victim, we test their situation if they meet the definition that I've discussed with you. And the first stage is how they were recruited or engaged, them and the trafficker. So we want to know, yes, you're looking for employment. Now you are in this particular country. What happened? You seem you didn't go to school. You don't understand anything. How did you find yourself in this particular country? We want to understand the recruitment process. It is very important. And also you'd see some of the indicators that point at issues of demand and supply are based on gender. Where you see a lot of women traveling to one particular country for labor. This particular country are only looking for women from this particular country. It means there's a demand to supply women in that labor sector, domestic. It's a pointer to human trafficking. There's a development project, road constructions. All of a sudden, you see a lot of movement of young men to that particular area. Fall through, you'd see, or you are an immigration officer. Now you're giving out passport. Everybody is telling you that they are going to this particular area. You don't know whether there's a road construction program or a school construction project. If you take an interest, you discover that all these young people, young men who are going to this particular area are going because of this construction. So there's a demand to supply the balance. And we need to tease that to see if indeed the movement was out of will or it's a forced movement. So the demand would happen or be made by the owners of lodges. They are looking for young women to be cleaners or also to attract those that are looking for young women. There is mostly a connection between nightclubs, a place where people go and have alcohol, and the owner of lodges. There's normally some linkages where the owner of a nightclub would want to boost sales of alcohol. They clearly know that men will not come for alcohol alone unless if they are young girls within the nightclub. And these young girls will not be sleeping in the nightclub. They will need a lodge, a place to sleep. So they would coordinate. This one provide the space to boost the business of the owner of the nightclub, and this one provide the shelter and control the victim. The moment young girl will be provided with that room, they will be let to sleep in that room for a week without any payment. In order for this young girl to incur a debt, if they want to leave, then they are told to pay. Now, they don't have any money. They need to find answers to that. So there is a parking debt and an incurred debt. And the only option is to go to the nightclub and work under those forced environment in order for them to be paid for their service, to pay the lodge, at the same time to boost business at the nightclub. It's an organized welfare crime. The owner of the nightclub is making business. This one, if there are not these women in the lodge will not be occupied for some time. Not worries, this and that. Now, all the rooms have been occupied. So there's that link. And normally, that's where the demands comes in. Demands from the lodge, demands from the nightclub. Restaurants, the movement of young people from Ethiopia to South Africa is to provide this type of services. There's a demand for young people to work in restaurants in South Africa. So there will be that type of recruitment. And other demands will also relate to marriages, mining, mostly unregulated or illegal mines, where there's a lot of demand. One thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is that this human trafficking doesn't know any industry, no economic sector. Every sector and industry is not immune to human trafficking. The demand is always there, and the suppliers, the traffickers, are always looking to respond to the demand. Trafficking for sex, as a pointer, pay attention. Most of the time, we tend to penalize, to mock women who are engaged in prostitution. I'm inviting you now, after this discussion, to look beyond the surface. Whenever you have seen a woman selling her body, before you comment and condemn, look beyond her face. Eventually, you discover that there is a network behind her that benefit from the service. If you try to remove and offer alternative occupation, she will resist because she's afraid of that person behind. You'll be surprised that this girl is coming from Malawi in America. She doesn't have any relation. How come every night, as an officer, I'm getting all these phone calls? Why are you holding this girl? Why are you holding my sister? There is someone else who has been benefiting, who wants to continue benefit from this girl. And now you have taken away their investment. They will fight on. So when you look beyond the surface of these young women, you'll discover that the resource beneficiaries. And normally, the traffickers for this reason of sex would respond to the demand that happens during festival seasons. So when you see an increasing number of young girls being exploited or engaged in prostitution, just know that there is something influencing that type of an influence. So it's about making profit, huge profit. There have been times when the inflation has worked to the disadvantage of an economy. Things are in the newspaper. Our dollar, our money is not doing fine. It has lost its value. What we used to buy for $100 will require now for us to have $200. In the eyes of the trafficker, they will also take that newspaper to the victim. Can you see what is happening around the world? Because of COVID, we are not making huge money. We are losing. And they will demand for the victim to make more money. So if they have been forced to sell their body to 4 men a day, they'll be required either to increase the amount of money they will ask for men or the number of clients in order for those benefits to be met. Ways would be young girls like these ones you see in the picture. These were some of my victims. The one in the middle, at the time of rescue, was 11 years old. And I could imagine that we rescued her at a nightclub where she was told by someone else behind her face to be making Malawian kwacha, which is 9,000 kwacha. Now, in terms of a dollar, it's $9 a day for the owner of the nightclub. It means every day she needed to sleep with 9 men a day. It was a must. And her friends, 16 and 13 years, were also involved in that syndicate. I've already talked about the link between the nightclub and the lodges. The picture that you see now are 3 women who were recruited from Nepal. Remember, I said these issues of human trafficking does not know border, doesn't respect any boundaries. So these 3 women were recruited from not Nepal but Thailand, taken into Malawi, where they were forced to sell their body for the trafficker, and each one of them was required to make a month $15,000 US, which is 15 million Malawi kwacha. When we rescue them, and before their repatriation, we needed them to, because the trafficker was also arrested, we needed to take them to, we needed them to testify in court. But we were surprised that when the court adjourned the case, because we had no interpreter at the time, this lady, this one, the youngest, started crying. This one started crying outside the court. When we asked her, why are you crying? I thought the judge had said we should come back tomorrow. She said that I got this message. Now, this was taken from a cellular phone, the picture here. It's her uncle who was killed in Oman. If a law enforcement officer, you are not trained, you will not understand the language of the traffickers. In the eyes of the majority of officers that I was working with there in Malawi at the time, they cried with her that she has lost an uncle. When it was shown to me, I said, learn to read through the processes. Normally, when the trafficker would not want the witness, the victim, to testify in court, they would send threatening messages with evidence. So this picture was sent to her as an evidence that if you testify in that court, then we even kill your mother, your father, as we have done with your uncle. So that's a picture of an uncle. You and me, we know it. We don't communicate about your dead relations by sending pictures. So it was a way to control the victim not to testify. They will always do that. The other examples are labor, where young people are recruited, like a case example of Malawi, to work in tobacco estates, for example, in Mozambique and Zambia. So as we approach the farming season, people from those countries, Zambia, Mozambique, would come to Malawi, recruit young people, take them to their farms in Zambia and Mozambique, make them work. Few months before harvest, they'll go to immigration officers and the police and report about illegal immigrants in those countries, in order for them to run away from any payments for the service. Having exploited them, then they'll be reported to the police as illegal immigrants. So the police will go there and arrest all of them, take them to jail for 6 months, and there they are provided free labor to the owner of those estates. And the tobacco that is seen in markets, most of them are generated through this exploitative service. So it happens all the time, every year it happens. The traffickers who really want to make a huge, huge profit. Other examples is the one that I've just talked about in terms of domestic work, where there is demand in Arab countries, and it involves the engagement of a labor agency. A labor agency, there are two types. Based on our experience, there are those that are registered and others are not registered. Based on the information coming from the courts, those that have been registered would receive $500 for a successful recruitment and delivery of the victim from the trafficker who is based in those countries. So you could imagine, you are looking for a domestic worker, you spend air ticket, you spend money for visa, and you pay the recruiter $500, total $3,000. What, for nothing? Can you just release that person without exploiting that person for your own benefit? So that's what is happening. For those who are not registered agents, they would get $250 US. These are the other examples of young people recruited and taken to Ethiopia to work in the restaurants. Trafficking for organ removal is another area of growing concern, where so many undocumented, street-connected children have fallen victims of this offense. People really believe that the use of organs for ritual can make them grow rich, become rich, can attract publicity and attention. You can just imagine, like in our situation, I like giving this example of the late MacDonald Masambuka, who was a person born with albinism, murdered by people from the church, a priest from a Catholic. A medical officer was involved, a police officer was involved, and a brother. So this young boy became a victim of human trafficking. You can just imagine how serious this offense is, where even a priest, a medical officer, a police officer are involved. It is a serious type of offense that would lead to loss of life. Human trafficking is an organized crime. Dealing with it, you also need to be organized. I'm speaking to you. I insisted that I need to speak to you because I want to be organized to deal with it. I want us to have a network that will strongly fight against human trafficking. So the only way to deal with it is for us also to be unorganized. To be an organized crime, it has to be formed by a group of traffickers knowledgeable and having some control measures for them to be organized. It has to be a structure of 3 or more people who have agreed to commit a crime. That makes them an organized group. And there is some sort of an organized, like criminal organization, and also they are organized to carry a criminal activity. They do collaborate in their languages, action, and what they are doing, they are collaborating to commit serious type of offenses with one objective: to make profit as a transporter, the recruiter, and the trafficker. They can't just be involved without wanting to benefit from huge profit. So they have some tactics which they use to control what they have recruited until they have made some profit. It's one of the main activity that happens in organized crime. I'm just showing you some examples of a picture connected to one particular girl who was recruited from a poor country and exploited in a rich country. And when the police searched through the phone handset of this particular trafficker, or rather the recruiter, it linked to all these people. Each one of them has a lot to play in this organized crime. So they are actors. They are recruiters, specialized individuals responsible for recruitment. They are transporters. On top of it all, there is the investor, the person behind the whole process, the one who wants to supply. He used corrupt officials, informers, guiders, mediators. Debt collectors are also involved. Money movers are also involved. So you can imagine why we focus on prevention. It is because when the victim has been recruited, that victim will be taken through all these processes. So they will be controlled by this network of actors that are involved in cases of human trafficking. When we are investigating cases of human trafficking, we have intercepted a track with a victim. The actors that will follow our names will start with the investor. All those players, if you confiscate the phones of all these players, you find Maxwell Matewere, Maxwell Matewere, Maxwell Matewere. It all, their handset. It shows that they are linked. All of them, they want to protect their business. One thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, there can never be an offense of human trafficking if there's no victim of human trafficking. So there has to be a victim for that offense to be committed. What it means, if there's no this victim who is a human, there's no witness to this particular offense. And therefore, the traffickers would want to make sure that there's no witness. So if you rescue a victim, you need to protect that victim. If you don't protect, they will kill that victim so that you don't have any evidence. That's why the language used as a way of codification, it starts with a human, a person, then look at the crime which has been committed, trafficking. Even in the case of smuggling of migrants, there's a migrant that has been smuggled. So you need to protect the migrant who is a victim of smuggling. In this case, there is that human who is the witness. So all these actors know that if police will start investigating this girl that has run away from the nightclub, all of us, everyone, will be arrested for that offense. Everyone will be the trafficker, so they know it. And they choose to dismiss any evidence, which also include the witness. There are different roles. Each one of them has got different role to play. Investors, they put forward funding to oversee the enterprise operation. The recruiters are one engaged in seeking potential victims and secure their services. There are also transporters, informers, all those players are involved in these processes. There are push and the pull factors. One, for you and me, these pull factors might sound normal and facts, but for the traffickers, these are the important factors which are used to target the resources, where to find the victim. So they will look at these push and pull factors. Some of the things that makes human trafficking grow or exist. They know that if you want to recruit girls and will not find any difficulties, let's go to the poor countries where the agenda is about poverty. So they'll come to those countries. Yes, people are not employed. Let's target them. So they'll look at that as and qualify those areas that is affected by all these issues as low-risk areas or country. They will target those for recruitment. Malawi, for example, is a low-risk country where it is not difficult to recruit the victim because they are willing, or people are already ready to move based on the situation. So we also need to deal with those causing factors. These are common things that you would face when you're talking to the victims, the pull factors. the victim would want to move, or the traffickers would want to, they already know, as I said, that people are already ready to move because they want to improve their social position and treatment, and they will also be responding to demand for housemates or work for women, demand for cheap labor, and also inadequate border control opportunities, false promises, and self-improvement. These are very important factors that are used. So this trafficker, as a specialized individual in the recruitment, they will use their skills in terms of inducement, where they will target people that are already ready to move. They also like to do a lot of attractions using adverts with false job opportunities, attracting the people's expectation. And also like a lot of facilitation, where they clearly set up their own networks for movement. They understand every country, what time to enter America and what time to exit America. They will not just come to America without studying the movement. So they will understand everything, how to pass and operate through the borders. Why we must not make mockery of the victim when they have been rescued? You must understand again that you are dealing with people that are specialized to shift the blame from their side to the victim side. One, the victim will say that, yes, I cooperate and participated. Why? I was in a position of need. I had a lot of expectation in life. That's why I agreed to cooperate. So the victim will attack people's expectation, will attack the victim's expectation. I'm looking for employment. They will attack them around that with job offers. The victim, the trafficker, also follow an organized process. It goes in stages until when the victim has been exploited. Then the recruitment and the whole process with the time of exploitation is built on position of trust. Trust me than the police officer. If you don't understand these things, you are a police officer, you ask a question from a victim, and the victim is rude, doesn't trust you, you think that the victim, that person is not a victim of human trafficking. Most of the time, the victim would protect and side with the traffickers. It is an organized process. They will kill the heart of the victim and look at you as law enforcement officer as a bad person who doesn't wish them well, who want to stop them from benefiting and meeting or receiving their expectations. And again, why it's so challenging to deal with this issue? The trafficker like to promote the victim's participation. When you start investigating, then the trafficker would say, no, I didn't ask her to go to immigration. She went there. I didn't go with her to the airport. She went alone to the airport. I didn't ask her to go to the hospital. She went alone. So they would like to build in advance some important elements in criminal matters that would shift the blame from them to the victim. But everything is done to protect themselves and also to control the victim. I have already covered in terms of the means that is used to recruit the victim. It's very important just to summarize this, because these are offenses criminal offences that are engaged to recruit the victim. And these are offences that we use to test whether indeed this one is a particular case of human trafficking or not. So after understanding the recruitment, would also screen the victim to see whether their link and relationship between the victim and the trafficker was based through abduction, was based through fraud or deception. So if any of these means has been established, any of them, even if this woman would say, yes, I'm engaged in this, I'm engaged as commercial sex provider, why are you engaged in this service? I was looking for employment. I'm poor. The next level, you need now, there's a consent. But was that granted out of will? So if any of this means has been established, even if the woman will say, yes, I agreed, then just know that that is a case of human trafficking, where the trafficker has abused the position of vulnerability of this woman for his own benefit. She is uneducated, she agrees. She doesn't understand anything else. Once that has been established, it's a case of human trafficking. If there's no link, it's not a case of human trafficking. It's a willing participants that you're facing. I'm winding up now by looking at a few things on the global. Of course, I needed to update my statistics, but when you scan through the UNODC website, you'll find some reports that have been published that will give you a clear picture of the current global situation. So close to 50 million plus people are victims of human trafficking, or recruited as victims of human trafficking globally. Where the majority are young people between the age of 18 and 24. And in the US alone, there are close to 1.2 million children that are trafficked each year, and almost 100,000 children are engaged in sex trade here in America. So you could see that even in the developing countries of America, this is an issue of growing concern. I'll skip the Malawian situation because I've already covered that, but just know that the largest number of victims who have ever rescued in a year was during COVID-19 2020, where we rescued close to 608 people who were victims of human trafficking that were subjected to all things that I've shared with you. Victim control, it's one West method that is used to manage the situation of victim. This is very important because when you're dealing with the victim, you need to know that the person before you has gone through a lot. And that person needs to see a difference between the trafficker who was controlling their movement, almost everything, and you as a police officer or a service officer. So to make sure that there's that differences, in terms of human trafficking, every social worker who is working on cases of human trafficking is known as a protection officer to protect the victim. And there's a process that has been adopted to make sure that the services that are offered to the victims of human trafficking must be provided as a mandatory process to heal, to protect the victim. It's not only about protecting the victim from human trafficking, but also the healing process. If you don't provide those services to the victims, trust me, the likeness of them committing suicide are high. Secondly, whenever they look at someone who's closer to the same gender of the abuser, just know that if memories will come back, the likeness of them injuring another person are high. So whenever they look at a man coming to them in such a way that they would call, if you don't counsel them, they will harm that person as they are protecting themselves. Suppose they recall. Issues of hallucination are very commonly associated with the victims. So the trafficker will use violence and threats to control the victims. They will also use deception to control the victim. They will also use imprisonment to control the victim. Sometimes they also use coercion to control the victim. And very, very common, they will use debt bondage, like the case I've discussed with you already in terms of lodge and nightclubs. And most of the women that are engaged in domestic work in Arab countries, even here in America, have been subjected to debt bondage. They are suffering, working as slaves. They want to go back home. They will be told that, okay, if you want to go back home, refund us our money for air ticket, visa, and all the expenses. Failing which, you need to continue working. So, debt bondage is one of the ways strategy that is used by the trafficker to control the victim that are engaged in labor exploitation. Very common in America in terms of controlling the victim through relationship. They will deceive the victim as if they want to get married. They'll eventually pretend as if the family is facing a lot of problems that need each one of them to earn a living or an income, and the man will start making arrangements for the woman to be exploited sexually. In the eyes of a woman who understand that, yes, as a family we're going through all these problems, not knowing that this man is controlling her through some deceived relationship. Some also use isolation as a method of control for a longer period, putting their victim in isolation to control them. Others will use ritual related to witchcraft to control the victim. In conclusion, why must we be discussing this and focusing on prevention? And maybe you say, why have I invested my time to author a book on human trafficking, which is now going through some languages? It will be published in America very soon, that tells stories of the victims that I've dealt with or assisted, for people to understand what is human trafficking and everything. The whole reason is to help out with prevention. Because understand, if we don't prevent, then people will end up losing their life. That's not something to celebrate. We always celebrate when we have saved people's life. As an organized crime, drugs, illicit drug trafficking, the drugs, when they're being used, that's it. You cannot release them or vomit them and use them again. Weapons, when they've been used, that's it. You cannot pick the used, what do you call, the used weapon, reload it. Yes, bullet. Thank you. Yeah, you cannot use a bullet, pick it up and roll it back. Its use is gone. But in terms of human trafficking, the victim are recycled. It's about recycle them, make a huge profit. So if a girl, child, a woman has been recruited for sex, they will be used all over again. One, they will not be allowed to let go. They are important witness. Either kill or control and make huge profit. Based on understanding, all the traffickers know that or are prepared, invest their time to control, to recycle. So you can just imagine a young girl, 9 years, going through these things. What was happening to that young girl? That's why we need to prevent. We need to raise awareness. We need to work together. If we don't do that, the trafficker celebrates because they know that those that could stop me from this business are sleeping, are disorganized, are not working together. And it's an opportunity for us to make money. The campaign against slavery in 1823 started with one person, others joined. And that person was William Wilberforce, an MP in UK. Now, slavery is a history. In terms of a crime, there are lots of slave-like services that have been used. Issues of human trafficking is a serious offense. Most of people will run away from it. Most of people don't show interest. It requires an individual to lead the process. That individual, to survive, to succeed, requires the strength and importance of building a network, which must be very visible. If you don't build a network, you can never win the war against human trafficking. In other words, what I'm saying, the few individuals that are here attending, you are the ambassadors, the William Wilberforce, the Maxwell Matewere. It has to start with you. Then others will join. That's how this issue can only be won. Thank you so much for your attention. Do we have any questions, any comments? Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay.